Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Jason Kenzie. Jason Kenzie is a filmmaker. You may have seen some of his work. I'm going to have him talk about that in just a minute, but I was privileged to be able to meet him at the Oak Ridge, Oregon Sasquatch Summerfest Festival just recently, earlier this year. It was a privilege chatting with him and being able to be involved with some interesting research, which you will all hear about in different ways. Jason, how's it going today?
Very good. Thanks for asking, Mara.
Absolutely. Do you mind sharing with the audience a little bit about what it is that you do and how you got into all this wild Bigfoot stuff?
Okay. I've always been a photographer and photojournalist. I actually started as a event and wedding photojournalist and photographer. And then one day someone walked up to me at an event and said, "Hey, would you take pictures of my dog?" And I was like, "Okay, I could take pictures of your dog. Do you want to be in the picture?" And the owner's like, "No." I said, "Okay." And I met up with them and I took these beautiful pictures of his dog. And he told me some stories about his dog that really touched me, that made me think, I wonder if other people have similar stories about their pets. So I started doing photography with people's pets and asking them questions about interesting things about their pets, like their dogs and cats. And one day someone came to me and said, "Hey, I have a pet caiman," which is similar to a crocodile or an alligator. It was about 3 to 4 feet long, and it lived in a makeshift aquarium bathtub in his basement. So after telling everyone that this guy has a caiman as a pet and wants me to photograph it, no one believed me, so I went out and purchased a video camera, and I went to the photo shoot, and I filmed behind the scenes of this incredible photo shoot. Couldn't believe how close I can get to this little caiman, and it was so exciting, and I earned the trust from the owner. He asked me not to put his name out there or pictures of him, and don't let people know where his place was for his caiman, and he trusted me after that. So his friends also had exotic animals as pets. So then I started getting requests to photograph their animals. So I started flying all over North America, photographing people with tigers and grizzly bears and greens and kangaroos and everything in between, wolves and bobcats and ostriches. And yeah, it was just so much fun. And I would film the behind the scenes. And I made a web series called My Animal Adventures, which you can find on YouTube. It's actually called Jason Kenzie's Animal Adventures. And there's over 400 behind the scenes of my animal photo shoots. It's a lot of fun. And then in 2019, the world shut down, and I wasn't able to do my animal adventures anymore. And I was driving myself nuts. I didn't know what I could do, and I was pacing back and forth. And one day my buddy Paul joked to me and said, "Heck, maybe you should do something on Sasquatch. Maybe he's an animal." And I was like, We laughed about it at first, and I thought, yeah, it might be onto something. Maybe Sasquatch is an animal of some kind. I went and interviewed a person who had an encounter, Class A encounter, where the Bigfoot walked up to him. And I found it fascinating. And so he sent me to someone else who had a Class A sighting where they were fishing, and the Sasquatch stood over him and pointed as if to show him something. And when he looked over and looked back, the creature had walked back into the forest. So then I started filming and interviewing, and I thought, I'm going to do a documentary. So then I got introduced to the First Nations people, and they pointed me to an area in the forest, deep in the forest, where they think that the Bigfoots live. And so when I went into the forest and went deep into the forest, I found a mountain lake. And in this mountain lake, there were hundreds of these giant footprints that went right through it. And I filmed it. I had a drone, and I would drone it from the top, and you could clearly see all the footprints. And I went and took the footage to the First Nations people, and they told me that I found the migration path of the Bigfoot people, of the Sasquatch people that migrated from Alaska all the way to California. I put it all together into a documentary, my very first one, and I put it out there on YouTube, and it just blew up. And then after that, I started getting film awards. So I won probably about 13 international film awards for number 1 and number 2, number 3, number 4. And I think number 5 had some awards too. And what was happening was Bigfoot investigators, they had these groups, and they would contact me, and they would fly me in with my gear, and they want me to film us looking for evidence. And we would go deep into the forest, sometimes either by helicopter, by boat, by like ATV, like any which way to get deep into the forest. And the one reason I love going deep into the forest, it's if something happens, if we hear something or we find something or we see something, we know it can't be human because we're so off the grid and off the beaten path. But the chances of someone just happen to be walking by would be slim to next. And yeah, it's been incredible. I've been to over 20 different states, over 30 different locations throughout North America. And I've seen some crazy stuff in the forest. I have been roared at, screamed at, howled at, rocks thrown at me. I have found some of the strangest tree structures, these giant axes. I've had an incident of a spider crawl where this creature just went right across the trail in front of me. It was in the forest, just like that. Just was so quick. And I remember the eye shine. The eyes just stared at me the whole time. It was as if it was on a gimbal or a stabilization. There was no bobbing. It was straight and into the forest it went. Yeah, it's just been a really amazing ride, and I hope to continue. I'm up to 15 documentaries right now.
You have a very intense backlog of documentaries, and talking to your team, because it's not just you that goes out on these, you have a whole team with you as well, they're just great people. And you have a few that you're currently working on getting ready for release, and that doesn't even include the Oak Ridge footage that was just shot.
It doesn't.
Which is incredible. You are constantly working on this, for sure.
Yes, I have 5 more documentaries. There's 2 paranormal documentaries that I'm working on too. But yeah, so now I have about 6 Searching for Sasquatch documentaries I'm working on. And soon there's going to be another 2. I'm flying out to Michigan and into the Ozarks to go after the Ozark Howler, which is possibly another Bigfoot creature.
That will be extremely interesting. There's a lot of different viewpoints for the Ozark Howler. What's the most remote you think that you've gone on these documentary expeditions?
So I don't know if anyone knows British Columbia, but we have some of the most dense forests anywhere in the world. We have places where humans haven't placed their feet. And one time I took a helicopter and I got dropped off way off by Pitt Lake, just on the back side of the mountains. And I was hundreds of miles in every direction of any civilization. And I spent a couple nights in the wilderness. And I found trees that were pulled out of the ground and turned upside down. They walked the trees somewhere and just ram them back into the ground. I found about 4 or 5 of them. I've found footprints. I've seen the eye shine. That's probably the most remote that I've done. Oak Ridge, when we're out there by the meadow, that's pretty remote out there. And we actually turned onto a couple other roads off the main road. We turned off and went even deeper into the forest. But I really love going off the beaten path, for sure. I don't really like to stick on the path.
Oh, absolutely. I'll share a little story about how wild you guys get. And then if you want me to take it out, that's fine. But I remember the night we took you guys up as a film crew, one of the nights, and I was hanging out with Steve, and you guys said something to the effect of, "We'll see you later. We're headed out." And we're like, okay. And then you guys just went for it. We were driving 4 service roads for what felt like 45 minutes trying to track you guys down, and you guys were up on top of a mountain. And I think it's amazing that we saw all of a sudden your flashlight come off the top of a mountain. You were running down the side of the mountain in the dark around 12 o'clock. And I was like, these guys are wild. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. They are in this 110%. I'm just glad we found you.
I could not, you know what? Now that you said that, back then I was like, wow, what are the odds that we come down the mountain after about 45 minutes to an hour of being out there and we just happen to come across you? I was like shocked. We were very remote. And to the point where we actually found those weird sticks, the knots of the trees that were pulled out of the trees and laid in a row. And then again, I was filming it. I'm so glad that I had my video camera with me at all times, because some of the stuff people wouldn't believe. But there was the knots of a tree. Imagine pulling one of those out of the tree, like just the knot. So it goes right down to a point. And we found them lying on a stump in a row, about 5 of them. So we didn't know Chad or Gwendolyn. They thought maybe it was left for us as a gift. So we took them, but in turn, we left them gifts. So I can't remember what Gwendolyn left, but I left them a Canadian dime. It was a Canadian 10-cent coin, which I hope I didn't insult them, because it's pretty much worth nothing. So,
That is hilarious.
The Bigfoot teacher will come by and go, "What's this? It's worth nothing. I'm going to kill that guy next time I see him."
That could push it over the edge for sure. That's really interesting. I think Chad may have showed me a picture of that, and it was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. That whole area is weird, but has there been a time when, you can think of all your expeditions, which are a lot. Has there been a time where just things have really escalated a lot and you've been like, man, if I could get out of here, I probably would get out of here right now. It's very intense right now.
I went to Texas. I think it's the river that separates Louisiana and Texas. And we were right on the border of that. And it's one thing I don't usually tell people. And the reason why I don't tell people is because, I don't know, I feel as if people might think very negative of it, but here goes. And when you see the documentary, it's number 5, Searching for Sasquatch, number 5, called, the Texas Screams. So I went into this area to go and interview a guy who said that he shot and potentially killed a Bigfoot. So I was excited to meet this guy, and I wanted to interview him, and I wanted to hear his story. Even though some people said, why do you want to put that kind of negativity into your docs? I said, it's kind of important to get all the facts from all sides. We waited for him. In the middle of the night, he shows up. He pulls up, we're sleeping, and he pulls up in his truck. And the truck, how do I say, either he had cut off the exhaust or he added a piece to his exhaust because it was loud. The exhaust was so loud, it was like I couldn't even explain exactly how loud it was. You could hear him coming from miles. He had all the windows down, and he was blasting this music, which was like death music. Kill, kill, die, 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 kill, 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 die. He had it blasting so loud that then again you could still hear him coming from a mile away. He pulled up and he steps out of his vehicle, and he's talking on his headset, and the music is just blaring. And then it wasn't even music; it was just noise. He turned it off, and he went in. I think he had a chainsaw, and he was cutting down logs. The entire forest around us erupted in screams and howls and roars all around us. It was nuts. It went on for an hour, these howls. And then there was coyotes that were howling at the same time. And I loved it. I loved it that when coyotes are howling too at the same time as these unexplained howls, because you can clearly tell the difference between the coyote howls and the unexplained creatures or whatever they are howling. And then we're getting roars. And it went on for so long. And I was wondering that maybe it was because he maybe really did shoot and kill this Bigfoot creature. And that the Bigfoots recognized him and were pissed off. And that's why they were going off. They went off for so long that it got to the point that we were all sitting around talking and just talking about, I don't know, cooking a hot dog on the fire. And so how's the hot dog? We're going to be eating a whole bunch of that? Or another howl. So anyway, about the hot dogs and the stuff around the fire. But that's how it was. They were howling and screaming so much around us for so long that we got numb to it. We basically was like, oh, okay, another howl. But I didn't think for 1 second that I needed to get out. There was a time where something walked up to me in a hammock tent, and 5 feet or 8 feet from me, it grunted in my ear, and I started shaking so badly that I was like, if this is a bear or a wild boar, I'm going to be injured here. And that's pretty much one of the only times where I really thought, okay, I'm in grave danger at this moment.
Wow, that is incredible. That area you're talking about in Texas, it is so intense. I've gotten witness reports and interviewed people from that area you're referring to that are just absolutely insane. So I could definitely agree with you that, yeah, I'm sure that I don't think it's out of the question that you would experience something like that in that area. It is so full of Bigfoot. It's intense.
Yeah, you should see the documentary. It's pretty wild. We even got something that stood up in the forest. We went to a graveyard. We went to a graveyard in the middle of the forest. It wasn't like there was like a major road that went to this graveyard. We had to take ATVs to this graveyard in the middle of the forest, and there was a gate off to the side that led to a farm way down the way. And we were there for 45 minutes, and we're howling, and we're doing wood knocks. And I walked over to the gate, and there was a sign on it saying, "Do not cross. Violators will be shot." And then I looked at everyone and said, I walked around it. And just as I walked around it, I heard walking in the forest. And I'm like, no, that's no chipmunk. And there's something heavy walking. I turned to everyone and said, guys, there's something walking. So everyone scattered. They went on the other side of the gate, and we stood up. So I ran into the forest with my video camera because I wanted to capture the audio, the sound of it walking. Well, everyone pulled out their flares, and they were looking. And at one point, you actually see something on the ground, and it was hot, and it stood up. It literally stood up, and someone took a picture of it. And it was like either it was a Sasquatch creature, or because it looked like whatever it was didn't have any clothes on. So either it was a farmer naked walking out from the forest, or it was a Bigfoot or something that didn't have clothes on. Because when I went and stood right next to the trees, you could clearly see my clothes, even on flare. I look red, white hot, but you could clearly see I was wearing clothes. But next to where the creature, it was naked. Or you have that photograph, and it's actually pretty cool to see.
Oh, man. The thing that I noticed about you is that the Jason that you get in the documentaries is the actual Jason in real life, which is really cool. You are a 100% passionate individual, fun-loving, like to have a good time, but you are very intensely focused on going after the Sasquatch subject and documenting what you can. It is very cool to watch someone, and everyone on your crew shares the same passion as well. So it is very cool to see. The other thing I want to mention real quick before I forget is you have a really cool graphic novel, and I picked up one of those for my son. He has just read it cover to cover and thought it was cool you signed it, but the graphic novel, if you guys are into like Marvel graphic novels and stuff like that, you should definitely check out Jason's graphic novel. It is very cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I do try, I am trying to find the evidence of these creatures. There's something out there. When I first started 5 years ago, going on 6 years now, I was a 20% believer in Bigfoot. And after almost 6 years of searching and the crazy stuff that I've seen in the dark forest, I'm a 50% believer. And the reason why I'm 50% and not 100% is because I haven't had a daytime sighting yet. I'm hoping to get that soon. I just need that daytime sighting for myself to truly believe that these creatures are 100% real. Because so far I've seen the eye shine and I've seen the shadow of them. Like, they move so fast. And for some reason, they know how to stand just outside of the infrared beam of light that comes from your video camera.
We'll say this as a teaser to another Oak Ridge episode that I'm putting together. But if you had been in Oak Ridge a few days earlier, you would have had that daytime sighting, correct?
I probably would have. Yep, I probably would have. So close. So close.
I know Chad at least had multiple daytime sightings, and I'll be talking to him about that. That was before I got there as well. And in fact, I want to say it was even the same day I got there. They were out earlier in the day, but that'll be discussed more in depth in another episode about Oak Ridge. But have you ever been to the southeast Oklahoma area yet, Jason?
I haven't. Not yet. Hopefully.
I would love to see what you come up with if you can ever make it down there. I used to think that was the number one best area, and it probably is really high up there. But after being in Oak Ridge, I was, man, that area is pretty intense where we were at as well. You mentioned a spider crawling Sasquatch incident. Can you share more about that? That sounds like a very interesting.
Yeah, so it was in the UP of Michigan. We had taken trucks and off-road very deep into the UP. It took us almost an hour just to get to Base Camp 1. And that's where we parked all the vehicles, and we made a camp with all the tents right there by the campfire, and we had set up all the equipment. So I'm sitting around a campfire, and we had just been hanging out that day, and it was nighttime now. It was probably about 11 p.m. And one of the Bigfoot researchers comes into camp and says, hey, points to one of the other guys and says, hey, let's go back and get the audio recorder that we put out earlier in the day. And the other Bigfoot researcher was like, no way, I'm not going out there. No, I'm scared. I don't want to go out there. So the other researcher was like, I could see him go. And then I stood up and said, I'll go. So I grabbed my video camera and off we went. And we were probably half an hour walk into the forest, going deeper into the forest. And I was photographing and filming all the tree breaks. So all the branches that were broken and twisted. A lot of these researchers believe that these creatures, they do these tree breaks, but they twist it at the same time, which is really hard to do. Even a small branch, trying to break it and twist it is almost impossible. And I was fascinated. So I'm filming, must have filmed about 10 of them so far, and we're walking, and we come to this area where all the trees had been pushed over across the path. And there was probably about 6 trees in a row. They were all pushed over, but the roots weren't showing. And these were big trees. They were probably about 8 to 12 inches in diameter. So they were still bigger than a dinner plate, these trees. But they were pushed over, almost like bent over the trail, where we had the basic, and all the trees were straight before it and after it. Like it was pretty thick on either side, except for this big patch, as if something had come and laid them all down. And we had to crawl through and over and under these trees to get through. And then we carried on, and I'm still filming all these tree breaks, and we get to the end, and we know no one's been down there for a very long time, at least a couple of years, because the grass that we were walking through at one point was probably about 2 feet tall. And it was very eerie. It was dark, it was quiet. We get to the far end, and we gathered, we got the recorder, and we started heading back. As we're heading back, we took a wrong turn, and we went for maybe 1,000 feet the wrong way. And then we were seeing cougar tracks, and I don't think it was bear tracks. We saw cougar tracks. I think we saw wolf tracks. And then we walked back, and we found the spot where we missed the turn, and we started walking more. And as we were walking, we see this tree branch that's over top of the trail, like it's hanging, and it's a tree break, literally 2 of them over top of the trail, hanging there, to the point where as we're walking up, I turned to the researcher and I said, "Hey, I don't remember that being there," because I was filming all the tree breaks because I was fascinated. And to the point where when we walked up to it, I had to like turn my head and walk around it, like move around it, like walk to the side because it was in the middle. And you could see it was just broken because the sap was still dripping, like it was still wet. And all of a sudden, as we're looking at it, we hear a crack from behind us. And we turned around, and Blake had taken his gun. He had a gun with him, and he held his gun, and we're looking down at the far end of this trail, and there was nothing there. And then he put his gun back down, and then all of a sudden I saw some eye shine right there, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Blake, I see it!" And I'm trying to get my camera to focus on it, and you could clearly see it was looking at us. It was tall. I would say probably at least 8 feet, 9 feet tall. And then all of a sudden, it closed its eyes. And after about a minute, it came back out. Like the eye shine came out really slowly. And there it was again. Then a smaller creature had walked out. And it opened its eyes and looked at us, and it was much smaller. It was probably about 7 feet, with at least a couple feet smaller than the other one. And it's just standing there looking at us. And it was just out of the reach of my infrared light on my camera. And as we're watching it, Blake goes, you could hear cracking. He's listened, and you hear cracking all around us. And I think there's more of them, and they're circling us. And I'm standing there. I'm freaking out inside. But I have a rule. I have two rules when I go out into the forest, if I go out with people. Number one rule is don't run. That's my rule. Do not run. If something happens, just stand your ground. Because we're in the middle of the forest. If these creatures are going to kill you, they're just going to kill you. There's nothing you can do. So by running, you could, if it was a cougar or a bear, they would chase after you because predator and prey, right? And also, the Sasquatch people would probably start laughing, go scaredy cat. Who knows? I just don't run. And the second rule I have, actually the first rule is no hoaxing. That's basically my number one rule if I go out with people. Don't hoax. Don't go throwing something into the forest and making it sound like there's something there. I really want this to be real. And then number two is don't run. So we're standing there. I'm looking at it. We're looking at these two eye shine, these whatever they are. And then all of a sudden they close their eyes. And I don't know whether they close their eyes or they just turn their heads and they walked into the forest. We walked up there really fast to that area, like a minute after the eye shines disappeared. And sure enough, beside where they were standing was a big open spot in the trees. The trees on either side of us were thick, except for that one spot where it was an opening, where something had just walked right through. So we walked back to the spot with, we wanted to investigate a little bit more of the tree break. So as we're looking, I did this maneuver where I pretended to walk one way and I turned really fast. And they're standing in front of me. So Blake was looking the other direction because he was still looking down the way to see if he could see any more of the eye shine. And I was standing beside him looking towards where he was looking. And then I pretended to take a step forward when really I took a step forward and turned really fast. And there, something that was probably 7 or 8 feet tall dropped to the ground in front of me, about 20 feet, 25 feet. And it went right over the trail. It looked like a giant spider, like massive, with the eye shine that just, and I'm looking at it. The thing is, my camera, my video camera was facing me because I was talking on camera, explaining what was happening. So when I turned, my eyes, because of the light of my screen, my eyes were still adjusting back and forth. And I was looking at it as it went across. And I think there was a second one too that was behind, and it stepped behind the tree. But I was so focused on the one on the ground that I'm looking at it going, is it a cougar? Because I know cougars, they do hunch down when they're about to attack, right? You know how cats will go right down? So I'm looking at it going, oh my gosh. It went right across, it was gone. So now I'm thinking to myself, what was that? Was it just my imagination of the shadows, of the darkness playing tricks on me because I was really hyper and very emotional and basically scared? That's what I was. I was just terrified. And then what I didn't see in real time, I saw when I was editing the footage 2 months later, where I saw the eye shine behind my head. Because I walked to the spot where I saw whatever it was when I crossed the trail. I was talking on camera, talking about, and I saw the eye shine behind my head, probably within 5 feet behind me. All I would have done is just turned and looked, and I probably would have seen it. At the moment, I didn't see it. But if you watch the documentary, I think it's that is on number 3. Number 2 and 3 is part 1 and 2. But number 3 is the ending with the spider crawl. And you actually see the eye shine behind my head. So yeah, that is my spider crawling story.
This is wild. I have not had a visual of any kind yet. It almost feels like I'm being built up slowly to it. I think that if you were to go 0 to 60 with, seeing something like that, oh man, I'm not quite sure what it would do to you, but I experienced some roars and screams in Oak Ridge, and who knows what will happen next for sure. Have you gone up to, there's a property in northern Minnesota with a gentleman named Randy. Were you involved with going up there?
So I did a documentary on Randy's place. It's called the Minnesota Roars. So that is number 10.
How was that?
Yeah, it was quite interesting. He would take us to where all the tree structures that he's found on his property, all these tree structures. And yeah, they were very fascinating. There was one point where we went to a pole that held all this Bigfoot hair that Randy said that's what it was. And he said he's seen these Bigfoot creatures walking across that. It was along those power lines going up the mountain, going into the forest. Yeah, clear cut. So it was a clear cut. His place is directly next to a clear cut. And he said he's seen a couple times the Sasquatch. And so in front of me right now, I'm holding some of that hair that I pulled off of the pole. And there was quite a bit of it. Now, I'm not saying it was Bigfoot hair because I haven't got it tested. For all we know, it was bear. It is quite fascinating, but it was interesting. I had mixed feelings with Randy's property. I wasn't sure if somebody was going there and hoaxing him and building these tree structures behind his back. But I do know that there has been a couple tree structures that he had no idea about. The spider, like I found a tree structure that looks like a spider web. So it was at nighttime and we stumbled on it, and it was huge. It was big. All the trees were woven on it, and it looked like a giant spider web. And he didn't know about it because when I got back to Canada, he called me asking, hey, where did you find that tree structure that looked like a spider web? And I explained it to him. And so he went out looking for it, and then he called me from the forest again, saying, hey, I can't find it. Exactly where did you find it? And then I explained it to him. And then the next message I got from him was, when he got there, the tree structure was knocked down. It was on the ground. Yeah, it's interesting. If you ever get a chance to go out there and explore his land, you should.
I've interviewed Randy. I believe he even gave me an invite to go up there. And the interesting thing is I also had other people reach out after I interviewed him saying, yes, we know where this property is. We live near it too, and we have stuff happen on our property as well, which I thought was very interesting. It didn't lead to any interviews, but it's always interesting to hear multiple people in the same area. Another thing that happened when we were near the meadow, I remember Sherry had been walking to our area, and she had said that something had actually called her name from the woods, which I wasn't really sure how to deal with that. It was very strange. Have other things like that happened?
So I've caught whistles. I've caught like kids playing in the forest. We're talking 1 o'clock in the morning and deep in the forest, catching what sounded like children playing, only briefly. I've caught singing, like melody, like a melody of some kind of a enchanted singing. I haven't really had anyone call my name. The only time I've ever had things call my name is when I've been doing a paranormal, when I'm investigating haunted locations, like churches or houses, or that's the only time I've ever caught things calling my name. But out in the forest, I haven't had that yet. But I have interviewed quite a few people who have had their names called in the forest.
It's very weird stuff. Also, you just mentioned hearing singing, which I think is a fascinating thing. I've heard that reported in the Pacific Northwest, in southeast Oklahoma. Can you share the area that you had heard the singing out in the woods?
So I was in Michigan, in the very same area where the creature was looking at me through the forest, bouncing back and forth, bobbing his head back and forth. It was in that same area. But I'll tell you one story here in the Pacific Northwest, out by where I live. I interviewed a lady who said that she grew up back in, I think it was like the 1950s, where there was no, the road that she lived on wasn't paved. It was on a First Nations land. And she lived in a small little cabin on the edge of a mountain by Harrison. This was close to Harrison Lake. But back then, there was no houses. Very little houses, very little population. But every evening, she would hear what sounded like a crying baby coming out of the forest. And she would sit there on her porch, and she had 3 kids, 3 little babies that she was looking after. And she would sit there on her porch in her chair listening to this crying baby. And the First Nations people would tell her that is where the Sasquatch would give birth, out there in the forest. I asked her to take me to the area during the day, and she did. She took me to the area where she actually physically saw one run across a road. I went and picked up one of my buddies, and we took a giant Bluetooth speaker, and we went to the area where she said that she would hear these crying babies, and we hiked in for probably about 45 minutes. And then in the middle of the night, we sat down, and I had downloaded a crying baby sound, and I put it in the Bluetooth speaker, and I played it into the darkness of the forest. Played it for probably 2 minutes, and I stopped it. And I'm telling you, Jeremiah, as I'm sitting here talking to you right now, out of the darkness came a blood-curdling scream, as if the thing was trying to mimic a crying baby that I had just done. I was filming it, and I caught that on film. The only disappointing thing is I was standing up, and because my camera was rested facing me, I didn't realize that the camera didn't face. It cut my head off and didn't actually capture my astoundment when I was like, what the? And I sat down, but Paul was sitting there, and we're like, what the? And it was close. It was so close to us. I would say maybe 200 yards in the forest. So I decided to go walking towards the area to see if I can get a closer look. And I could hear running through the forest, running away, whatever it was. But I was like, I could not believe it, that happened right after I played this crying baby. And I was so happy that I was filming it.
I've heard that. I've heard people use that baby cry. I've never had the guts to do it myself, just because I'm afraid of what might come back towards me, and that you prove that stuff can respond out of the dark. You also mentioned an interesting thing, which I also experienced multiple times, which you hear researchers say that you're only going to hear stuff if your recorders are off. I experienced that multiple times. Were you able to actually capture any audio or anything interesting up in Oregon? I wasn't able to because my recording stuff had issues, or it was turned off when I heard stuff.
Yeah, no, I wasn't able to capture any audio. None of the. We heard a couple howls off in the distance, like that roar. But yeah, it's so weird how it's as if the thing's in the forest waiting. It's off. Okay, let's do it, guys. Oh, he's about to turn it on. Everyone shut up,
No, absolutely. And I used to think when people would say that, I would be like, okay, yeah, but I experienced it once my stuff was turned off and put in the car. There's something to it, I think. It is so incredibly weird. I do want to ask you one more question, Jason. It's a basic one, but it's a fun one. You're into this 5 or 6 years. Do you have any thoughts as to what this is that we're dealing with, what these Sasquatch actually are?
It's interesting. I do think there's they're an animal of some kind. I think they are highly intelligent. I can't tell you if they're alien or if they're from a different planet. This thing about cloaking, there's a big possibility that they have some incredible camouflage skills, only because when I think about that stuff, I always think about the real animals in real life that do have abilities of cloaking, or at least camouflaging themselves, like the octopus. The octopus and the cuttlefish, they have incredible abilities of camouflage to the point where they could almost cloak. Why can't Bigfoot have some similar kind of abilities of being able to camouflage themselves? The thing about them going through portals, or at least being invisible, the only one thing that goes through my head is, if you think about it, allegedly these animals don't want us to see them. That's why they run past us, or they run away when they think that they're being seen. If they could be invisible, or if they could just transport themselves through a portal, why would they ever come out of being invisible? Why would they ever come out of a portal? If they don't want to be seen, when they get seen, there's a chance they could be shot and killed. So it could be dangerous. So if they have the ability of being invisible, why would they ever come out of being invisible? It just, people say maybe it hurts them when they're invisible. I'm like, I don't know about that. Why would why would they make something like that where you're in pain when you're invisible? I think they're flesh and blood, and it's only a matter of time before we finally get an amazing shot of one. And not to shoot one, just a nice picture of one,
and
a video.
Yeah, exactly. Documentation. Yeah, that's a great clarification to make. My viewpoint is actually very similar, so it's good to hear that as well. Even though every viewpoint is fine on this podcast, I talk to all sorts of people, but I do also think it's probably some kind of physical animal that can do things that science just can't explain yet. Jason, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you this afternoon. Do you mind taking a few minutes reminding people how they can keep up to date with what you're doing, watch your documentaries, and maybe even what you've got coming up next with all that?
Yeah, if anybody is interested in finding my stuff, you can find my documentaries free to watch on Tubi TV, Roku, Plex. Go on Plex, you can find it there. You can find it on Prime Video. You can find it on YouTube also. There, you can find my comic book or my graphic novel. You can find that on Amazon. In fact, if you just Google my name, Jason Kenzie, animals, or Jason Kenzie, Sasquatch or Bigfoot, you will find all the news reports that have been written about me, all my documentation. I do have a website called searchingforsasquatch.ca. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram called Searching Sasquatch, TikTok, Searching for Sasquatch on TikTok. But yeah, I just want everyone to know, if you want to lose yourself in my Bigfoot adventures, they're fun, they're adventurous, they're good for the whole family, and soon you will see Jeremiah in one of them. He looks great on film. So get out there and have fun.
That's true. You will see me in one of them, won't you? It was fun being involved with that. But Jason, it's been a privilege chatting with you, and hopefully our paths cross again someday in the future. And thank you for coming on, man.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
Chad, whenever you're ready.
My interest in Bigfoot came in the 90s. When I really got interested in Bigfoot. My first knowledge of Bigfoot, believe it or not, came from a TV show called The $6 Million Man, and also In Search of with Leonard Nimoy. Okay, so now I'm giving away my age. And the Patterson-Gimlin footage, that short clip. That, as a young child, was my introduction into what Bigfoot was. And I always was told that it's not real. It's what you're seeing is all made up. What people are saying is all made up. And as a young child, influential, it's easy to believe. But I always still remembered the things that I watched. And then in the 90s, with the internet and things becoming more available, and me seeing something Bigfoot, and I go look at it. I don't even remember what the first thing was on the internet that I saw. And then I realized that it led to more things, more stories. I spent years just reading and watching any video I could, following researchers, years. I'm not out looking for Bigfoot, listening to what everybody else had to say, all opinions, because everybody has a different opinion, but listening to every opinion. And then all of a sudden Finding Bigfoot comes out. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is the greatest thing ever. I love the show. I mean, no, I'm not a fan of the show. I understand how network runs it now and all that. But it brought attention to the topic. And then it brought more people coming out. See, Finding Bigfoot did a great thing. They did a great thing with their database. Matt Moneymaker, he did a great thing at making sure that happened. And then he did a great thing at bringing the attention to the topic. And then people that have held in their experiences for years and years coming out in the open and telling people. So this was huge. Now the internet's even getting better, and now I'm finding researchers out there. And I find a guy named Mark Zasky, who is my mentor, and I studied everything he did. Everything. I followed him, and everything he put out, I followed him for years. I became really good friends with him. One day he says to me, because now I'm an armchair researcher for 5+ years, he says, you know what, Chad? You just need to get out and find out for yourself. And I'm like, I have no clue what I'm doing out there, even though I'm an outdoorsman and a hunter. I'm not a Bigfoot professional. I've just been watching all these videos, even though I didn't realize I really had all the knowledge I needed to make my own decision as far as cognitive decision as far as what was happening. And I'll admit, it's easy to think, if you're looking for Bigfoot and something happens, it's easy to think Bigfoot, but that's the last thing you want to do, because most of the time it's not. But Mark convinced me to get out in the woods. And the minute I got out and I started researching, I was amazed. I took all the knowledge of tree structures. I started finding tree structures. And a lot of stuff falls in the woods. But I'm finding stuff so intricate that it has to be built. It would require hands to put the stuff together. And then so now I'm finding these areas, and then now I'm like hanging out. I'm not just tromping through the woods. I'm going and sitting and listening and camping in areas where I find this kind of stuff. And I was amazed that the activity that would happen at night when you're in your tent, or when you're sitting around the campfire and you can't see anything because all you have is a campfire light, and everything outside the campfire is just jet black, and the noises you'd hear and the things you'd find the next morning. I'd find a camp spot that I'd search the whole area, look for signatures and signs, structures, glyphs, and all that. And I know I searched the area and wake up the next morning and get up, and all of a sudden there's this glyph in a tree that I know for a fact wasn't there. Now this is telling me there's something going on. There's something real. Then I find this area that I didn't believe they were in, but they were, and I knew from what I had learned. And I started habituating them. I spent a couple years every day or every other day leaving them apples, habituating them. Then I had my first daylight sighting out there. Like, I go out after work. It's about dusk. I hang these apples. I can hear stuff moving towards them. It's like it got to the point they were so comfortable, and I just go do it and leave. And I'm walking out, and all of a sudden I just had this feeling I'm being watched. And I turn, and in an arch of a tree, it wasn't a really big tree, but it was a wide off tree, and there was a Y. In the arch of it, I look, and there is the shape of a head, and it's a dark head, and then there's an outline of like shoulders outside of this tree staring at me, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, no way am I seeing this. And the minute I think that, it steps out to the side and it's standing there right in front of me, just looking at me. And it's not a huge one. Maybe I believe it was a juvenile. And it just stands there and just looks at me. And then I just get this feeling, and I get this like pulsating going through my body, tingling, and I get this like this dread going through me. And, you know, I stared at the thing for 5-6 seconds, the longest I've ever stared at one in the daylight. But this feeling that came over me and through my body, I was like, it made me retreat, and I retreated. I mean, I have a lot of stories, and I can't get into all of them. But really, I got my start because of the internet, because I always had the interest, and I was able to look up all these reports and stories and people's beliefs, and to be able to study the greats out there. There are great people out there. There are. I'm not going to name names, but anybody that's into Bigfoot research knows there's people that are long gone that put in so much time and effort into this that I get to study what their findings are. And there's people current out there today that really actually put in the work, not network type people, even though I have nothing against them. The network personalities, they're doing their job. They're bringing attention. So what they do is important. But those aren't the personalities that I follow when I want advice about Bigfoot. And I don't know. I don't know where else to go from there, Jeremiah.
That's such an incredible story. You know, and you're the first person that's brought up $6 million man, which kudos to you, because Comments is going to love that. They're always talking about that. But just the fact that you put in the work about 5 years doing the research before you actually were like, all right, I will go out and see what happens. And I don't think enough people do enough time getting the foundation down. So kudos to you. How did you get involved with the Jason Kenzie? This Jason Kenzie guy, this crazy dude, who I love. I say that because I got to hang out with him, and the dude is amazing. You guys are the most fun team ever.
Well, he's definitely crazy. I think that's the only reason that I can hang out with him, because I finally found somebody crazier than me. But it's not even really that difficult of a story. I helped start the Michigan Bigfoot Conference in Ann Arbor. It was the first one ever. I was a big part of it. I was a big part of getting the speakers, setting it up, organizing everything. There was a lot of other people involved. Shout out Dave Dominique. Shout out Ernest Fargo. Shout out Sherry Barsha. Shout out John Thaler. I can't even name Josh Parsons. There's so many people that were involved to help make this successful event happen. And Ernie said, "Have you ever seen this guy? He's got I think he had 1 or 2 documentaries up. He's so funny." I watched his first one. I said, "This guy ain't funny. This guy's an idiot." And he says, "Watch the next one." I watched the next one. I said, "Well, he's getting a little better." And then he says, "I think we should invite him to the conference." We had a minimal budget, and at the time, Jason was young, new and up and coming. I talked to him, and he accepted it. But the deal was he wanted to hang out after. He wanted to go do a documentary after. So that was the main deal, to get him there, pay his way there, room, and I do a documentary. And so we get him there, and I'm like, okay, all right. His personality on film is him, but it's not, you don't get to see spending 24 hours straight with him. And he's such a pleasure to be around most of the time. Don't get me wrong there, Jeremiah. Most of the time, he's such a pleasure to be around. I contacted him again. I said, "You know what, Jason? I'll fund this. I'll fly you in. Let's do a documentary in Michigan again." And ever since that, it took off. Now, that was a bad thing, though, because I flew him in for 3 weeks. I'm going to tell a story. It's not really Bigfoot related, but it's Bigfoot
All right.
event related. I'm flying him in for 3 weeks. The night before I'm supposed to pick him up from the airport early in the morning, I'm mowing my lawn. It starts downpouring. I run in the house. It quits raining. I run out to get the rest of the lawn done. I hit the bottom step, and my feet slip out. Wood deck steps. Slip out. I fall. I break 5 ribs. I almost die. I spend 2 weeks in the hospital. Literally. I get surgery, get plates put in my ribs finally, and then I'm out within a couple days after that. I have 1 day to spend with Jason. I am out there every day with him, hiking through the woods, I'm falling down a cliff, just out of the hospital. So that is our first actual, really, me and him, aside from the conference thing. After that, it just took off. Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, Pennsylvania. No, Ohio, Michigan 3 times, Ohio, Florida. I wasn't in Indiana, but I made Indiana happen. Then Kentucky, then Pennsylvania, Oregon. And this is all within the last less than a year and a half, like these 6 that I'm mentioning. So, yeah, I'm just going to keep doing it. We're all a team. We all chip in. We all do our share. We all take this really seriously, Jeremiah. You see it. You see it. You've been out with us.
So
we have fun, too.
I want to comment. So I've seen not all the documentaries, but I've seen some of them. And my first thing was like, wow, this guy is goofy, but he's having fun. But then after I got to spend time with them, I was like, wow, these guys are having fun, but they are taking it way more serious than I'll say they're at the top of taking this. Like, they are seriously trying to get evidence and document, and they're just having a really good time when they do it. And it's such a unique combination. I haven't really seen it anywhere else, to be honest. So it's great.
I'm not in it if there's not seriousness, and that's just me. And Sherry, too. And as you speak of Jason, that's just his character, man. He's just a clown. But sometimes when we're out in the woods, it's a totally different Jason. We really research. We really solo camp. We really go alone out in the woods. Everything isn't on film. It can't all go on film. Most of the times you're out there all night long. Nothing happens. Mm-hmm. Nothing worthy. But it's times that something happens, which they happen. Absolutely. You spend enough time in the woods, and you do the research right, you will have something happen.
Has there been a time when you're out there filming a documentary where it's just gotten really weird or things have really escalated and you're like, wow, I'm not sure if this was a good life decision to be in this right here where stuff is just out of my control?
It hasn't yet, not during a documentary.
Wow. Okay. Cool. I mean, that's
but
good.
Crazy stuff happened. Just watch the Michigan one where we had Robin Haynes McRae there, and she's telling us the Bigfoot are right here. Their mind speaking to me. His name's, what did he say? Harambe. They have a family. They're worried about you. You're scaring them. They're right there. And then all of a sudden, eyes everywhere, crashing through the woods. It's in a documentary. What one is that? 6 or 7, I think? 7?
5?
Or 5? I don't know. It's a Michigan one. It's everything that happened is there. Jason told me, Chad, there's something in front of me. Chad. And you see his eyes up, and you watch it drop to the ground. Chad, it just dropped to the ground. I'm standing right there looking at it. I'm not saying nothing. I'm just locked on the eyes. All that really happened. And then the crashing through the woods. Yeah. And then we also have other fun things. We go chomping through a freaking roost of turkeys up in the trees that scare us. We get on film. But yeah, the first thing you think, we're about being attacked. Have you ever walked under 25 turkeys up in trees?
Not
and all of a sudden they all take. Okay, no, we've got this on video. It scared us, dude. I am not kidding. I think it's coming out in one of the documentaries. You will hear it in our voices. I've never had that happen to me before either. But yeah, we're out there looking for Bigfoot, and all of a sudden it's just a forest just erupts. Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm looking forward to that. Definitely. What do you hope is accomplished through all these documentaries that the team is putting out?
My main goal is to one day get paid, but that's not what I'm looking at. My main goal, actually, is to get the word out there, to get other people interested, to get other people researching. Truthfully, my goal is to be a part of getting validation of the species that I know exists. That is my true goal. Okay. Am I ever going to make money at this? No. But maybe I'll break even one day. But that's not what this is about. I've been doing this so long that it's not what it's about. What it's about is the next generation, getting the young interested, because we're a dying breed, Jeremiah. We are a dying breed. We are falling out. All the OGs are dying. They're either dead or they're dying off. And now it's us. And it's our responsibility of the people between 30 and 55 to get the generation below us interested in looking into it and seeing for themselves it's real, so that they stay dedicated and continue. It's going to be hard to prove it's real. We know it's real. We have a battle ahead of us for that. Media, and I don't even want to get into the details. Most people that are into Bigfoot understand who's stopping us from this being the truth and being out there and being validated. It's not the trolls. It's not the trolls on Facebook that aren't helping this be validated. It's higher sources above us. So I'll leave that at that.
Oh, yeah. And I'll just throw a little bit in there, too. I agree with you, Chad, 100%. There are times when I've been doing certain interviews and certain things are mentioned, things just go, it just totally shuts down. You know, it's just like, dude, I don't know. You've heard things, I've heard.
I have a personal experience with Department of Interior. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes. So you're saying you have an interesting story with the Department of the Interior?
Absolutely.
Okay. Go right ahead, my friend.
I was in Florida. I moved down there for a couple years. Started a business. The business didn't work out, so I took a job with my brother. We installed gates and security systems and things like that. And one of our clients that we did their gate for was a panther preserve in the Everglades, 15 miles from David Shealy's skunk ape headquarters. We happened to be down there doing a job over by date. We had to do two of them right in that area. And my brother, my first time at the skunk ape research headquarters. So my brother would drive right by it, have to, so he stops there for me. I buy a hat. I walk through it. I buy a hat. Then we go to the panther preserve. We get there. I meet this old guy, Department of Interior, federal government, and I'm a Bigfoot researcher. And my brother introduces me to him, and we're just chit-chat, and I bring up, hey, has anybody ever came to you and reported a Bigfoot? And he laughed, and he said, no. And then I give him this look as I'm wearing the skunk ape research headquarters hat. I give him this look, and then he looks at me and says, oh, unless you're talking about the Shealy brothers. And I'm like, okay. And so then I let it go at that. And then I said, you have to have trail cameras all over out here, don't you? He said, oh, yeah. I'm like, what's the weirdest thing you've ever got? So I'm like fishing while I'm working. We're repairing his gates. Says, tell you the truth, Chad, an Arctic fox. I'm like, what? He said, yeah. Don't know how it got here, but we've got an Arctic fox that we've got on trail camera. Which, why would it be in the Florida Everglades? we're working and stuff, and just chit-chatting, and I'm not pushing the Bigfoot thing. And my brother sends me to the van. I forget what he sent me to go get something, a tool or something we needed. And my brother, this is what my brother told me. He said, when I sent you there, I looked at it and I said, my brother's really into this and really believes in this. We all just laugh at him. He said, folded his arms and stared at him and didn't say a word. He said it was the weirdest thing, Chad. But I get this all after what I'm about to tell you happened. So he finished the job up and everything. Federal government, he can't tell me nothing. He can't say nothing. I'm getting the van. He says, hey, Chad. I turn around and I said, hey, yeah. He looks at me with his arms folded, and he just shakes his head yes, like majorly shakes his head yes, turns around and walks away.
Whoa.
He's not allowed to tell me he can do that. My brother made fun of me. He knows I know. A lot of people know. Most people just believe what they're told by media. Let's be honest. Why would the government want us to know they're real? Why would they? How does that benefit the government? It doesn't. It hurts it. Financially, it hurts. It hurts so much. Just with the parks and recreation. Oh, missing 411. Okay, yeah, all these people that were missing here, yeah, we think most of it's Bigfoot related. Oh, yeah, bring your kids, your children here. $1 billion industry. What's it do to the Catholic Church? They already took the Book of Enoch out of the Bible, which has, I believe, a lot of what Bigfoot is in it. I can't say it does because it no longer exists, but I believe.
It is absolutely wild stuff. I just recently have been having, they say they're national park rangers reach out to me from different areas, and the interviews never get set up for some reason. They never follow through, and I don't know if there's some, I don't know, but it is getting to the point where I think people are trying to reach out from behind that curtain of government protection, because I think there are definitely park rangers that know something, and they're at the point where these forestry workers, these park rangers are like, we have to get the word out. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 10, 15 years. But
yeah, and when they come out on their deathbed, because there's so many that they say, oh, they're old and senile.
It's wild. It's absolutely wild. And what you guys are doing with searching for Sasquatch is it is the coolest thing. It's a documentary series that sneaks. It's sneaky because it looks like it's just goofy, but then it's incredibly serious. And I totally recommend everyone check it out. It's on Tubi, YouTube. I think it's on Amazon Prime too, right?
Yep, it is. And we all love each other. That's a weird thing. Because the whole team, we love each other. Like, we share tents together. We pick ticks off of each other. If my back itches, anybody but Sherry will scratch it.
It's weird. Like, spending hours with you guys in the woods, like, I totally get it. A lot of listeners will be like, this sounds kind of weird. It's like, guys, just you'll get it. It is very unique. It's totally unique, but it is an absolutely legitimate thing.
Spend a week in a tent together and drive into a shower and they haven't even experienced it yet. In my early days, I've bathed in a creek. And Sherry hasn't experienced that yet, but that's coming up. Oh, bathing in the creek? Oh, she has. Oh, that's right. You did bathe in the creek. What? Yeah, literally. People, they see it out. They see, okay, Ohio. We'll just say they see this documentary, and it's an hour and a half long. They don't realize we spent 7 days in the woods together, and they just see the hour and a half.
Absolutely. Oh, man. It's there's more. The behind the scenes would be too much to handle, but it is amazing, and I loved every minute that I got to spend with you guys. Chad, thank you for spending some time hanging out, talking to me tonight. Do you mind reminding listeners how they can keep up to date with what you guys are doing with the searching for Sasquatch and all that good stuff?
We actually have a whole lot planned ahead. We're not behind in documentaries because we've got one editor and one main guy, Jason, and it takes time to get through these documentaries. I think we're like actually 3 that still haven't even began editing, and we're about to do 4 here in a month and a half that we're going to film in a month. And so there's going to be a lot of documentaries coming out. It really does take a lot of time. I've been thinking about maybe we go live more, just to do little fun 1-hour shows while we're out in the woods. If we're somewhere we can have signal. Yeah. If I pick my phone up right now, Jeremiah, and I walk 15 feet away, it's going to hang up. I'm sitting in a perfect spot. I can't touch my phone. But I'd like to do some live stuff here in the next year so that we have more content out there available.
Right.
Because we're typically 4 months, then the next documentary is out. And then once that's out, then Jason has to edit for 4 months, and then we have to do all the research that we do. And that takes 4 months between the research we do and the other documentaries we film to get that next one done. But then the one that we just filmed, that's a year up the road before it comes out. The Oregon one, I don't know, man. It's going to be months before that one comes out. Right. But it's going to be well worth it when it does.
Does he have anybody that we could contact for do an interview with?
What are you talking? Why would you?
He knows.
What?
You realize he's going to have to edit this all out. This is being ridiculous. You couldn't wait until we were finished.
Sherry's the best. She's so good.
But okay.
Sorry.
Okay, you want to redo anything with that?
That's great. That is great. Thank you so much. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.